I never thought I'd be the guy someone said they felt safe with. Like, that kind of vulnerable, heart on the sleeve safe. It's not exactly what I had on my dating app profile, you know? Most people just swipe past the sarcastic, borderline cynical, can drink you under the table type. But then there was Jamie. He looked at me like I was the only guy who didn't make him want to run the other way. And honestly, that threw me off balance more than I expected. We met at this tiny coffee shop in the East Village, one of those places where the tables are so close you can almost overhear the barista's arguments with the espresso machine. I'd gone there on a whim, needed a change from my usual routine, something a little less sterile than my apartment. And Jamie was sitting there, head buried in a notebook, scribbling furiously. He had this calm intensity about him, like he was trying to solve a math problem or maybe just escape from whatever storm was inside his head. I sat down nearby, not because I was trying to be smooth or anything, but because the place was packed and, honestly, I didn't want to deal with the noise of the city outside. After a few minutes of stealing glances and pretending to scroll through my phone, he caught me looking and gave me this shy smile. "Hey," he said, voice low, a little hesitant. "Do you come here often, or are you just avoiding your apartment like me?" That was the start of it. I learned his name was Jamie. He worked nights at a bookstore, and he was terrified of being alone, which for some reason made me want to be around him even more. There was this raw honesty to him that I hadn't seen in a while. Most people put on a front, but Jamie, he was just Jamie. No pretenses. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and we're meeting almost every evening, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for a walk, sometimes without any real plan, just sitting side by side on a park bench, sharing stories we never told anyone else. One night, after a long walk and a few too many beers, he stopped me as we were saying goodbye. "You know," he said, eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite place, "you're the only guy I've met who makes me feel safe. Like, really safe. Like, I can just be me and not worry about getting hurt or judged." I tried to play it cool, but inside I was buzzing. Safe? That's not the word I expected to hear from someone like Jamie. I was the guy who joked about everything, avoided feelings like the plague, and usually kept people at arm's length. But here was Jamie, looking at me like I was his anchor in a storm. Then, just as I was about to say something, I don't know, something meaningful or reassuring, he shifted closer, and suddenly I felt the heat before I saw it. He got hard. Like, right there, in the middle of our quiet street, under the dim glow of the streetlights. That moment caught me completely off guard, because up until then, everything had been so simple, so safe. And now, suddenly, the lines were blurred. Safe didn't just mean emotional refuge anymore. It meant something a lot more complicated and way more intense was about to happen. I stood there, heart pounding, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do next. I'm not gonna lie, my brain kind of short-circuited for a second. I mean, here we were, just two guys standing on a random street corner after a few beers and some late-night wandering, and Jamie suddenly, well, visibly not subtle about being turned on. I could feel the heat radiating off him, and I swear, the air between us got thicker in a way I didn't expect. For a half second, I just wanted to laugh it off, maybe tease him a little, because, honestly, it was awkward as hell. But then I looked at his face. There was no smug grin or cheeky smirk, just this raw, quiet vulnerability. Like, even though he was clearly aroused, he was also scared as hell. So what now? I finally blurted out, because silence felt heavier than usual. Jamie ran a hand through his hair, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him, which honestly made me want to protect him in some weird, unspoken way. "I don't know," he admitted. "I guess I just didn't expect this. I didn't expect to feel safe with someone. And then, yeah," I said, rubbing the back of my neck, trying to keep my voice casual but failing miserably. It's a bit of a plot twist. We stood there for a moment longer, the city humming around us but somehow fading into background noise. I could tell he wanted to say more, but the words were caught somewhere between embarrassment and fear. The thing is, I've always been the guy who's had a hard time dealing with feelings. I'm not exactly the classic romantic type. But with Jamie, something was different. He'd let his guard down around me in a way that made me want to step up, to be someone better than I usually was. And right now, that meant figuring out how to handle this moment without screwing it up. I leaned in a little, just enough so he could hear me clearly. Hey, if you want, we can just walk back to my place. No pressure, no expectations, just some company. He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. The walk back was quiet, but not in a bad way. It was that comfortable silence where neither of us felt the need to fill the space with words. We passed the glow of late-night diners and the occasional street musician, but the city seemed to shrink down to just the two of us. When we got to my apartment, I flicked on the lights, and Jamie looked around like he was trying to figure out if this was really happening. I shrugged. It's nothing fancy, but it's safe. He smiled a little sheepishly and sat down on the couch. I joined him, close but not too close, letting the tension simmer between us. So, I said, breaking the silence, about earlier? You want to talk about it? Jamie looked down at his hands, then back up at me. It's just rare for me, feeling like this around someone. Safe, I mean. And then feeling, well, turned on. It's confusing. I nodded. Yeah, I get that. It's weird to mix those feelings. Safe and excited don't always go hand in hand. He laughed softly, the kind of laugh that felt like a release. Exactly. I'm afraid if I let myself go there, I might mess everything up. You won't, I said firmly. I'm not going anywhere. That seemed to ease something in him, and for the first time, he reached out and took my hand. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, our pasts, our fears, the weird ways we both messed up relationships before. And through it all, that feeling of safety kept growing, like a slow-burning ember between us. Eventually, the conversation drifted back to that awkward moment on the street. Jamie looked at me, hesitant but curious. Do you feel the same? Like, safe with me? I thought about it a second. Yeah, I do, more than I expected. He smiled, that shy, genuine smile that made my chest tighten. Then maybe we can figure this out. Together. At that moment, it wasn't about what happened or what might happen next. It was about knowing that we'd found something rare, someone who made the chaos a little easier to bear. And honestly, that was more than enough to keep me standing there, hand in hand with Jamie, ready to see where this unexpected path would take us. After that night, things between Jamie and me took on a rhythm I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't like we had some grand declaration or instant romance that swept us off our feet. No, it was more subtle, like two puzzle pieces nudging closer until the edges aligned just right. We started spending more evenings together. Sometimes I'd cook, which, if you'd asked me a month before, I'd have laughed at, because I was the king of takeout and microwaving leftovers. But Jamie had this way of making me want to try. We'd throw on some music, dance awkwardly in my cramped kitchen, and I'd watch him laugh so freely that my chest felt warm, like I was holding on to something precious. One night, I remember Jamie coming over after his shift at the bookstore. He was tired, his shoulders hunched, but the moment he stepped inside, his whole demeanor shifted. Like the safe space we'd built around each other was a refuge from whatever the outside world threw at him. We sat on the couch, and he leaned into me, head resting against my shoulder. I could tell he was struggling with something, so I just held him there, letting silence do its work. Finally, he sighed. It's weird, you know? Being with someone who makes me feel safe, but also wanting more. Wanting to be close in ways I'm not used to. I looked down at him, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. More how? He hesitated, then his voice dropped to almost a whisper. Physically, emotionally, I'm scared of screwing it up or pushing too hard. I smiled gently. Hey, we're figuring it out together. No rush, no expectations. It was the first time I saw Jamie exhale like he was letting go of a weight. That night, we didn't rush into anything. We just held each other, the kind of intimacy that doesn't need words or actions, just presence. But the next day, things got complicated. Jamie texted me from work, asking if we could meet up later. When I got to the bookstore, the place was quiet, the scent of old pages and coffee lingering in the air. Jamie looked up from the counter, his usual calm replaced by something restless. "I've been thinking," he started, "about what happened the other night. About us." I nodded, trying to read between the lines. He took a deep breath. "I want to be with you, but I'm afraid, not just of messing things up between us, but of what that means, of being vulnerable in a way I haven't been before." "I get that," I said, stepping closer. "I'm scared too, but isn't that part of it? Taking that leap, even when you don't know if there's a net?" Jamie smiled, but it was tinged with uncertainty. "Yeah, but I've been burned before. Hard." I reached out, taking his hand in mine. "Me too, but I think what we have is different." He squeezed my hand, eyes searching mine like he was trying to find the truth buried there. We spent the next hour talking, really talking, about past heartbreaks, fears, and hopes. It was exhausting and emotional, but also freeing. I realized then that Jamie wasn't just the guy who felt safe with me. He was the guy the first wanted to feel safe with too. A few days later, we decided to take a weekend trip outside the city. Just the two of us, no distractions, no noise. The kind of trip where you can't hide behind distractions or excuses. We found this little cabin by a lake, surrounded by trees that were just starting to turn gold and red, with the first hints of fall. The air was crisp, the kind that fills your lungs and somehow clears your mind. That night, after dinner, we sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the stars blink alive one by one. Jamie turned to me, his eyes reflecting the flicker of the fire pit. "I want to try," he said softly, "to be with you fully, to see where this goes." I smiled, my own nerves buzzing in anticipation. "Me too." We didn't rush anything. Instead, we spent the night talking, touching, exploring the kind of closeness that builds trust brick by brick. When our hands finally found each other, and the space between us closed, it wasn't awkward or rushed. It was something tender, a conversation without words. I'll never forget the way Jamie looked at me in that moment. No walls, no fear, just pure, unguarded connection. In that quiet cabin, away from the chaos of the city and the noise of our pasts, we found something real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt what it meant to be truly safe with someone and excited about what the future might hold. That weekend at the cabin felt like a turning point, not just for us. I went into it half expecting the usual messiness that comes with new relationships, especially the kind where both people are carrying their own scars. But instead, it was peaceful, like the kind of quiet where you can hear yourself think and feel without all the usual noise drowning you out. On the second morning, Jamie and I woke up to this soft light filtering through the curtains. The air smelled like pine and something earthy I couldn't quite place. I found him sitting by the window, a cup of coffee in his hands, staring out at the lake like he was trying to memorize every ripple. I slid next to him, stretching my legs out on the floor. "You look like you're thinking about something heavy." He smiled, that gentle, tired smile. "I am, about how weird this all feels, but in a good way. About how safe I felt with you, and how I don't want that to end." I reached over and took his hand again. "It doesn't have to. We'll figure this out, one day at a time." He squeezed my hand, then looked down with a little chuckle. "You sound like my therapist." I laughed. Maybe I should charge by the hour. The rest of the day was lazy in the best way. Breakfast in pajamas, long walks around the lake, and more talking than I thought either of us could handle without getting exhausted. But it felt necessary. Building trust like this isn't some overnight magic. It's a slow dance of showing up, being honest, and sometimes just sitting with the discomfort that comes with opening up. That night, after dinner, Jamie surprised me. He pulled out this worn-out book from his bag, the kind you can tell has been read over and over. He flipped it open to dog-eared pages filled with little notes in the margins. "I thought maybe we could read some passages together," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "It helps me make sense of things." I nodded, feeling honored. We settled on the couch, close enough that our legs touched. He read first, his voice low and steady, and I found myself getting pulled into not just the words, but the way he was sharing this part of himself with me. It wasn't just about the book. It was about him trusting me with his inner world. When he finished, I leaned in and kissed his temple. "Thank you for sharing that," he smiled, cheeks flushed. "There's more where that came from." Over the next few days, the walls between us kept coming down. There were moments of awkwardness. Sure, times when insecurity crept in, or when one of us did something silly and had to apologize. But there were more moments of real connection than I'd ever experienced before. On the last night, we sat outside by the fire pit again. Jamie was quiet, his gaze fixed on the flames. After a while, he looked at me and said, "I want you to know something." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I'm scared. Scared to let myself love someone after what I've been through. But with you, it feels different. Like maybe this time, it could work." I reached out, brushing my thumb over his knuckles. "I'm scared too, but I think that's part of what makes it worth trying." He smiled, this genuine, open smile that made my heart catch in my throat. "So what do we do now?" I thought about it. We keep being honest with each other. Keep showing up, even when it's hard. Jamie nodded, leaning into me. "Deal." That cabin trip didn't magically fix all our issues or erase our fears, but it gave us a foundation, a place where safety and desire could coexist. And that's rare. Real rare. Back in the city, things felt different. We weren't just two people casually hanging out anymore. We were partners in this messy, unpredictable thing called love. And honestly, it scared me in the best possible way. One afternoon, a few weeks after the trip, Jamie and I were sitting on my fire escape, watching the city pulse below. He looked at me with that same look, the one that said he trusted me more than anyone else, and I realized how lucky I was to be the guy who got to hold that. He squeezed my hand and said, "You're my safe place." I smiled, feeling something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Hope, and "You're mine." Sometimes love doesn't come wrapped in fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes it's in the quiet moments, the small acts of courage, and the willingness to be vulnerable with one person who sees you and still chooses to stay. And honestly, I wouldn't trade that for anything. It's funny how moments like that, the ones where you're just sitting, hands intertwined, watching the city hum below, can feel so monumental. Like, the world keeps turning and people rush by, but for those few minutes, it's just you and someone who's become your anchor. Jamie held my hand with this quiet confidence that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I could stop being so guarded all the time. But as much as I wanted to believe in that, old habits die hard. A few days after that afternoon on the fire escape, I found myself getting that familiar knot in my stomach, the one that told me I was about to screw something up just by being me. Jamie had invited me over after a long day at work. I was already tired, and honestly, a little anxious. The truth was, as much as I loved spending time with him, I still struggled with the vulnerability that came with it. I kept wondering if I was enough, if I was doing this relationship thing right, or if I'd end up pushing him away. It's exhausting, carrying all that in your head. When I got to his apartment, Jamie greeted me with that easy smile that always made me forget whatever worries I dragged in with me. But as the evening went on, I could feel myself retreating into my shell, giving short answers, avoiding eye contact, scanning the room for an escape route. Jamie noticed. He always did. "Hey," he said gently, pausing while I was fiddling with my phone. "What's going on? You've been quiet all night." I shrugged, trying to play it off. "Nothing. Just tired, I guess." He didn't move right away, just studied me like he was trying to read my mind. Then he reached out and placed his hand on my knee. "You don't have to pretend with me." I looked up, meeting his steady gaze. It hit me how much I wanted to be honest, but didn't know how to start. Finally, I blurted out, "I'm scared that I'm gonna mess this up, that I'm not good enough for you." For a second, the room was silent except for the hum of the city outside. Then Jamie pulled me closer, wrapping his arms around me like he was trying to keep me from disappearing again. "Look," he said softly, "I'm scared too, but I'm not here for perfect. I'm here for you. All of you, even the scared, messy parts." His words felt like a balm I didn't realize I needed so badly. I let myself lean into him, letting go of some of the tension I'd been carrying. We stayed like that for a while. No words, just holding on. It was messy and imperfect, but it was real. A few nights later, Jamie and I went out to this little jazz bar he liked. It was one of those places that smelled like old wood and smoke and felt like a secret hidden in the middle of the city's noise. We sat close, letting the music wash over us. At one point, Jamie reached across the table and took my hand. The gesture felt unspoken but full of promises. "Do you ever think about the future?" he asked quietly. I thought about it. "Sometimes, but it scares me," he nodded. "Me too, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't have to have it all figured out. Maybe we just have to want the same thing." I squeezed his hand. "I want that. I want us." For the first time, I felt like I could believe it. Not just hope or wish, but truly believe. As the weeks passed, our relationship deepened in ways I hadn't expected. We faced our fears head-on, talking through misunderstandings, sharing insecurities, and learning how to support each other without losing ourselves. One afternoon, Jamie surprised me with tickets to a small theater show. It was a quirky little production about two guys navigating a complicated relationship, and it hit close to home in all the best and most awkward ways. After the show, we walked through the city streets, hands clasped tightly. Jamie stopped suddenly and looked at me with that serious, vulnerable expression I'd come to recognize. "Hey," he said, "I know we're still figuring things out, but I want you to know, being with you has changed me, made me want to be better, not just for you, but for myself." I felt my throat tighten. "Same here." He smiled, a little shy. "So maybe we could start talking about next steps? Like, maybe moving in together? When you're ready, of course." That caught me off guard. Moving in? Me? With someone else? But hearing Jamie say it out loud, seeing the hope in his eyes, I realized I was ready. Maybe not perfectly ready, but ready enough. "Yeah," I said, grinning. "Let's do that." We spent the rest of the night dreaming about an apartment that was ours, a home filled with laughter, late-night talks, and those quiet moments where being safe and loved felt like the most natural thing in the world. Looking back now, I can't believe how far we've come from that awkward night on the street when Jamie got hard in the middle of nowhere and I didn't know what to do. It wasn't always easy, and it still isn't. But love like this, it's worth every messy, scary step. And honestly, I'm just glad I didn't run away. Moving in together was a whole new kind of adventure, a mix of excitement and that low-key panic that hits when you realize you're about to share your space with someone else. For me, it wasn't just about the logistics or the furniture. It was about making room for Jamie in my world, and maybe more importantly, making room for myself to be seen and known in ways I'd never really allowed before. We found this small, sunlit apartment in a neighborhood neither of us had explored much, a little off the beaten path, but with enough charm to make it feel like home. The first time I walked through with Jamie, I caught myself imagining us there, not just living side by side, but actually building something together. We laughed about who got which corner, joked over paint swatches, and argued playfully about where the couch should go. It was all these little moments, ordinary but new, that made it real. Like when Jamie insisted on bringing his old record player, and I rolled my eyes but secretly loved hearing the crackle of vinyl in the background. But as much as the new place was a fresh start, it also stirred up some of those old fears for me. Sharing a home meant sharing vulnerabilities, routines, and the messy parts of life, things I'd usually keep hidden. One night, after a long day of unpacking, I found us sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes. Jamie looked over at me and said, "You've been quiet today. Everything okay?" That question hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't sure how to explain the jumble of feelings swirling inside. "I guess it's just weird," I admitted. "This is real now. You're here. Like, really here." And part of me is excited, but part of me is scared. Scared I'll mess it up, or that I'm not enough. Jamie reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "I get that, but I'm here because of who you are, not who you think you're supposed to be." His words felt like a lifeline. I leaned into him, grateful for the quiet reassurance. In the weeks that followed, we settled into a routine. Lazy Sunday mornings with coffee and scrambled eggs, midweek dinners where we tried to outdo each other in the kitchen, and late-night talks that stretched into early mornings. One evening, Jamie surprised me with tickets to a small indie film festival. The movie was about two men navigating complicated family dynamics, and it resonated with both of us in different ways. Afterward, we walked home under the city's glow, the air crisp and alive with possibility. Jamie stopped, pulling me close. "I've been thinking a lot about my family," he said quietly. "About how hard it's been to be honest with them. I want them to meet you someday. I want them to know us." The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. "That sounds huge," he nodded. "Yeah, but I think it's time." I squeezed his hand. "I'm with you. Whenever you're ready." But as the idea of introducing Jamie to my own friends and family came up, I realized I had my own walls to face. I'd kept parts of myself hidden from them for years, afraid of judgment or disappointment. One afternoon, Jamie and I were at my place when my phone buzzed, a message from my sister inviting me to a family dinner the following weekend. I sighed, looking down. "I haven't told them about us yet." Jamie's eyes softened. "Want me there?" The thought both terrified and comforted me. "Yeah, I think I do." That night, we talked late into the evening, planning how I might share our story with my family. It felt daunting, but necessary. When the night came, Jamie and I arrived together. I could feel my heart pounding as we walked through the door, greeted by familiar faces and curious smiles. My sister pulled me aside, whispering, "He seems great. You look happy." That was all the encouragement I needed. Over dinner, I introduced Jamie not just as my boyfriend, but as the person who made me feel safe, seen, and challenged me to be better. The conversations weren't perfect. There were awkward moments, questions, and even a little tension. But through it all, I saw Jamie's kindness and patience shine. Afterwards, as we walked home, Jamie slipped his hand into mine and said, "You did great." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in a long time. So did you. Living together, facing our fears, and slowly weaving our lives together was hard work, but it was real. And with Jamie by my side, I was beginning to believe that maybe safe didn't mean boring or stagnant. Maybe it meant freedom. Freedom to be messy, to be vulnerable, and to love without holding back. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Months passed after that family dinner, and life settled into a rhythm that felt both comforting and exciting. Jamie and I had our share of disagreements, nothing wild or dramatic, just the everyday stuff of sharing space and building a life together. But each time, we found ourselves talking through the mess, instead of shutting down or walking away. That was new for me, and it was everything. One chilly evening, we were curled up on the couch, the soft hum of the city outside filtering through the window. Jamie was reading one of those old books he loved, and I was half watching a movie but mostly just soaking in the quiet between us. He looked up, eyes catching the glow from the lamp. "You know," he said softly, "I never thought I'd find someone who could be both my safe place and the person I want to explore everything with." I smiled, feeling warmth spread through my chest. "I feel the same. It's funny how I thought safe meant boring or dull. But with you, it's the opposite. Feeling safe means I can be all the parts of me I usually hide." He reached out, brushing his fingers over mine. "That's what love should be, right? Not perfect, but real, honest, comfortable." I nodded. "Yeah, real." There was a pause, comfortable and full of meaning, before Jamie leaned in and kissed me gently. Not rushed or desperate, just steady and sure, the kind of kiss that feels like coming home. Pulling back, he grinned. "So, what's next for us?" I thought about it. "Whatever comes." Together, we sat back, hands still entwined, and I realized that the unexpected twists, the fears, the awkward moments, the moments when we almost ran, had all led us here, to this simple, beautiful truth. Finding someone who makes you feel safe is rare. Finding someone who makes you feel alive at the same time is even rarer. And Jamie, he was both for me. As the city lights flickered on outside, I felt a quiet certainty settle inside. Love doesn't have to be fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes, the most profound love is the one that lets you breathe easy, be yourself, and face whatever comes next, hand in hand. That night, wrapped up in each other's arms, I felt exactly that. Safe, seen, loved. And I knew, without a doubt, that this was just the beginning.